I was sure Hollywood would totally F this film up, but it actually turned out to be a really fun movie. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. Thanks for joining me. I'm talking about Cold Storage. And if you watched my previous video, picking my top 5 anticipated movies of 2026, Cold Storage happened to be my #1 pick. Now, the pickings are slim. I mentioned that in the video. And honestly, even though this was my top pick, I had no hope for this movie. I knew that based off of the past 8 or 9 years, Hollywood would mess this up by pushing some ridiculous message. They would forget that movies are here to entertain us. So I knew that this movie was going to be dog trash because they couldn't escape needing to push their views on me. But would you believe it? They actually didn't. I mean, there might be some stuff in there, and some people might feel like they'd be able to argue with me on that point. But I really felt that this came off as a solid B film. There are some problems here, and I'm going to touch on them. Despite liking this movie, the biggest problem of them all was the CG. Sure enough, the CG just really took me out of this film. And I think most of this could have been done with practical effects. And had they used practical effects in the explosion of people and animals, in the projectile vomit, in any of these areas, it would have increased probably my score, which I'm currently landing at a 6 out of 10. It probably would have bumped it up to a 7 out of 10, maybe even a 7.5. Now, I recently watched Primate a few weeks back, and that movie sucks. And the only thing that saved it was the practical effects. So if practical effects helped an absolute trash movie, they would have absolutely helped a movie that was entertaining from the start. Now, I don't know how they would have pulled off a practical effect deer. It couldn't have looked any worse than the way this CG did. And that was the one thing that pulled me out of this movie, was the CG. It's not really scary, but this movie was definitely gross. But that also leads to the true scary part about this. Spoilers, be warned, or spoilers. At the beginning of the movie, they get this container, they get a sample of this fungus, they put it in cold storage, deep freeze, and then they just totally nuke the whole area to make sure that the stuff doesn't spread. This is what's scary to me because it seems so probable. The government cares more about keeping this organism alive for some odd reason, locking it away in a freezer on government property, and then selling that property, closing down that facility and selling that property. But never does anyone think, hey, we should probably destroy this stuff. No, they just encase it and think everything's gonna be okay. That just seems too plausible to me. Let's do the least amount and hope for the best. And if it does escape and kill the poor people, I'm looking at you, global elites, then oops, what an unfortunate event. Oh, that doesn't sound planned at all. This is another problem with this movie. Despite me enjoying it, landing in a 6 out of 10, this fungus seems to gain strength or lose strength as the story seems necessary. It seems unstoppable at some points, making its way through any kind of barrier, but then somehow losing its power when it's convenient to keep our heroes safe. And that was a little bothersome to me. Also, this movie starts in the past, and then we jump to the present. The first time we encounter an infected animal in our present time, it makes no sense. I was ready to just be done with this movie right then. Sorry, I might be having fun, but the logic break here is too great for me to follow along. And I'm like, how did this animal become infected by this fungus? This makes no sense. There is no probable way that this could have happened. This animal shows up and suddenly it's infected? How did it get anywhere near this fungus? I was done. I was like, sorry, this logic breaking, I can't deal with this. Now, later on in the movie, they do a flashback and they explain how it becomes infected. And granted, the explanation is weak AF, but at least they tried to explain it and they weren't pulling this, well, let's just hope that the audience buys it. I give them some credit there. They at least did tie up that little hole. It wasn't tied very tight. It was kind of like oh, okay, well, there you go. Before I go, I want to do a new segment called Cousin AJ's Review. I enjoyed it. It would have really hit home for me if they had a couple more quirky storage characters show up, because this all happens in a storage unit. The boyfriend had one of the best projectile vomit scenes. I'm typically not a big fan of vomit, but that part was delightful. It definitely went by fast in my opinion. I think it was only like an hour and 38 minutes. I would watch it again if it was on TV. So I'll give it a low 7. Seemed like it was missing something that could have sent it into a higher ranking. Oh, really? And my argument is practical effects. That is the one thing for me, what is holding this back from being something that could be a future cult classic. Now, the other weird thing to me, and I'd have to check with somebody else, like maybe my cousin later, but it'll be too late for this, is I don't think, it was gross and there was gore, but I think when you had exploding animals and people, there was some blood in there, but I think the majority of it was green slime. So in my opinion, it felt like the gore was toned down a little bit, just simply because the idea that they were so infected by this fungus that when they explode, you could see that they were just almost entirely taken over. And the green was supposed to help you understand this. So that's where I'm landing. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. My cousin AJ, he gives it a low 7 out of 10. I don't think you need to see it in cinema, though going with a friend or somebody you love could increase the value of this movie. I didn't feel like I wasted my time or my money going to the cinema, and I will give it another watch once it hits streaming. This could have been a future cult classic had they fully leaned into the practical effects. This definitely has a fun retro feel coming from the 80s. When I mentioned in my most anticipated 2026 video about how I felt this had the Return of the Living Dead feel to it, it did not disappoint in that area. Let me ask you this, those of you who have seen this movie and are maybe looking for others to back you up in your own feelings, even though I enjoyed this, is this a case where Hollywood has given me so much garbage for so long that when a mediocre movie that doesn't try to shove the message down my throat comes along, I'm accepting it with open arms? Or is this a legitimately good movie? I need to hear from you in the comment section. Let's hear what you got to say. Also, if you have any other suggestions of movies I should check out, please leave those down there. I love to discuss this stuff with you. I love to hear from you. If you made it this far, you're a champion. You get a gold star. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm Judah. This has been Creepin' It Real, and I'll talk to you later.